Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Beth. And if you are new here, I started a series back in December, all of like 2 or 3 weeks ago, where I am trying to get through a lot of the palettes that I picked up during the holiday season. So I've done quite a few already, so I'll have a playlist linked in the description box and in the cards, where I'm basically kind of following a similar format for each video where I do some swatches, then do a demo, and then I tell you whether I like the palette and whether I think you should pick it up. So today's video is on the ABH Spice palette, so that is what I am currently wearing on my eyelids. So if you'd like to see some up close and personal swatches and the demo, then just stay tuned. All right, so time for some swatches. So my plan here, I put this back in the box, is to swatch the 9 shades in this palette all at one time, and then I'll remove those. And I wanted to do some dedicated swatch comparisons between quote-unquote special shades, so the what are they called, sparkling foiled or wet effect shadows. I want to compare those to I have a whole stack here of all my Natasha Denona palettes that have those types of formulas. So I just wanted to do some dedicated comparisons of those particular shades because I found it really interesting that that is how ABH named them. So these shades just have numbers, so it's A1, A2, A3, B1, B2, B3, C1, C2, C3. So up at the top here we have A1 is a matte creamy nude. A2 is a matte taupe with silver reflex. A3 is a matte warm brown with pink reflex. So that is the first row, and you can see the 2 with reflex do have a little bit of a sheen to them there. So those are the first 3. Next up we have the Wet Effect Sparkling Fawn, is what this is called. And then we have a Sparkling Foiled Crystal Gold with a green shift. And then finally a Wet Effect Sparkling Pink. So that is the third one. And these do have a little bit more like substance to them as far as shadows go. And so nice and reflective there. And then the final row here, we have a matte hazelnut with sparkling reflex, like so. A metallic vintage bronze. Trying to make sure the residual shadow is knocked off there. Metallic vintage bronze is this one. And a matte warm umber. So those are the final 3 shades. That one, I don't know if I just didn't get enough pigment. That one seems a little bit more difficult to blend. Okay, so there they are all at once. And I will zoom in. I realized I forgot to put my rings on again after I washed my hands. I get eczema if I'm not too careful when I wash my hands a lot, so the water kind of gets trapped underneath the ring, so I haven't been wearing them, but anyway, let's go on then to zoom back out. Let's talk about the wet effects. So that would be B1 and B3. So this is the fawn and this is the pink. So that's what ABH is calling a wet effect. And there's a little bit of kind of crumbly fallout there. Okay, so let's talk about the shadows I want to compare these to. So I'm going to pull from the I Need a Nude, the Xenon, the Hyper Natural Face Palette, and then the Golden and the Roxa. So these are all palettes that have wet effect shades. First from I Need a Nude. 3 shades actually from this palette. So I want to swatch Delilah, which is this one right here. And again, I think you can see the shadow isn't as, it's not as thick. That's the best way I can describe it. So Delilah is a sparkling wet effect silver brown. Sheen is a glossy wet effect warm champagne. And Mia is a sparkling wet effect icy pink. So those are the Natasha Denona wet effect. The shimmer is a little bit finer. It almost looks more kind of densely packed in there. Color-wise, I think this B1 shade is kind of close to Sheen. Color-wise, I mean, both of these are pretty close. The Mia shade is a little bit of a cooler pink. Hopefully see the reflect there. Okay, so I may come back to I Need a Nude for the second formulation, but I want to pull out Xenon, and the shade Stellar is a wet effect. So this is a sparkling wet effect white, and this one up here, really more of a silver, but silvery icy white. And then from the Hyper Natural Face Palette, the shade Dreamy. So this one right here, this one looks like it might be a tad closer. A little bit more peach. I mean, it's kind of similar to that one as well. So 2 more. So from Golden, the shade Fizzy is a sparkling wet effect golden nude. So this one up here, a little bit more of a warm, kind of antique gold, I guess. Swatching it, it's a bit peachier, but so there is the golden shade. And then finally in Roxa, the shade Flutter is a sparkling wet effect lilac pink. I haven't played or swatched this palette yet. So the shade Flutter. That one had a little bit more kind of thickness to it, I guess, but that is a much more kind of lavender, cool toned shade. All right, so let me zoom in on those. I don't think it's the same formula at all, really. So those 2 shades at the top are the ABH shades, and then going down the arm, I mean, whether the shades will read that much different on the eyes is another question, but They definitely feel different. So yeah, let me know which formulation you think you might like better. I'm trying to get the light to hit all of them kind of evenly. Okay, so let me go wash these off and then we'll talk about the foiled shade. Okay, so last round here. So this shade B2 is a sparkling foiled crystal gold with a green shift. So very carefully, you can see it's traveling a little bit inside the palette. So that is the ABH. Okay, so just due to the shade itself, this is, I think, a metallic shade in the mini gold, the shade Dor, D'(OR. That is a metallic. So the middle one in this particular palette. This is a much more, obviously, kind of green leaning gold palette. And I might have had to kind of press this shade back in at some point. So that is a metallic shade from Natasha Denona, and I believe this particular palette has been discontinued. Similarly, from the bronze palette, so I think this was before she came out with the sparkling foiled formula. There is a shade called, actually two shades. One is called True Bronze, and that is a foiled bronze chroma crystal. So chroma crystal is the name of the formula, and so this is True Bronze. And then the other one is Silk, and that is a foiled rich champagne metallic. So again, not exactly what I wanted to compare, but just for the sake of showing you what else Natasha Denona has released. And that last shade Silk was also in the baby bronze palette, I believe. All right, so going to the Love Face palette. This, I think, was maybe the first palette where she had a sparkling foiled shade. The shade Affinity, sparkling foiled icy vintage rose. And I keep the boxes for these palettes so that you can, or I can easily reference the formula. So SF. And this color-wise, I don't think it's going to be similar, but that is the shade Affinity. Going more into, I think, what's going to be closer, the Yucca palette. So this one has 3 different shades that I wanted to swatch. So the first one is Como Rebby. That's a sparkling foiled mustard gold. And we also have Elysian, and that is a sparkling foiled medium taupe, so not quite the same. And then last one is Makia, sparkling foiled medium golden olive. So those are the sparkling foiled in Yucca. And I think the ABH one, it's a little bit of a looser kind of texture. Like, I think you can see there's a little bit more skin kind of peeking through. Some of these, they're a little bit more opaque. Let's zoom out just a tad. All right, so back to I Need a Nude. 3 shades in this one. So Ella, which is up here. So this is a sparkling foiled warm fawn. And I noted that this shade here, which is the wet effect, was also described as a fawn. So I thought I would just quickly show you those. I'm not sure what I did to my hand there, but yeah, not all that similar. All right, so Ella, swatch that one again. Muse is a sparkling foiled champagne, which seems like it's a little bit of a different formula from Ella. Filigree is a sparkling foiled medium neutral brown. So this one right here. So a little bit kind of chunkier than those ones. Am I gonna run out of room? Yeah, Muse, it's a little bit closer to the B3 shade. Again, that's a wet effect from ABH. Might have to start swatching on my other arm here. So yeah, so we had 3 from I Need a Nude. Going into Xenon. So for Xenon, we have 3 as well. So those include Cygnus, which is a sparkling foiled anthracite, like so. Super Ionic, which is a sparkling foiled silver with multicolored specks. And finally, Skift, yeah, down here at the bottom, sparkling foiled light medium champagne. So I'm right-handed, so this feels a little weird to me. Okay, so let me go ahead and just swatch. One advantage to the Natasha Denona palettes is that they are, the pans are easily removable. So you can kind of customize, or if you wanted to put them into a smaller magnetic palette, these palettes allow you to do that. Okay, so only one from the Golden. I have to be really careful how I'm moving my arms here so I don't end up with shadow everywhere. Golden, the shade Nubia, here. So this is the first time I'm breaking out the I Need a Warm palette for this video. And there are 2 shades, and then we have 4 in Roxa. So I Need a Warm, there is Elm and Push. So Elm and Push. That feels a little bit more kind of like a metallic formula. I kind of want to swatch Phenomena. It's a multi-chrome. Yeah, a lot different. That one almost looks neon. Very cool though. All right, and then back to Roxa to finish up. So there's four shades in total here. Where are we? So Stargirl is a sparkling foiled duochrome pink with a bronze champagne shift, like so. Bolt is a sparkling foiled graphic designed violet and silver. So this is the, like I said, I haven't really swatched this palette yet, but this is, it's really pretty. I don't care for it when they do that. Concord is a sparkling foiled medium violet. And Brink is a sparkling foiled pink. Oops, that one kind of crumbled up a little bit too. So yeah, those are pretty different, I would say. Okay, so that is it for all of the shadows called sparkling foiled, and I think you can see even within Natasha Denona's range, I think it's helpful to call these different kind of metallic or sparkling shades different things so you kind of know what to expect. But even within all the Natasha Denona palettes. Am I going to be able to get all the way in frame? Even within all of the Natasha Denona palettes, there were distinctions in the formulations. So I don't think there's any kind of industry standard in terms of what a sparkling foiled is. I mean, matte, you kind of expect a certain thing, but even within, like Natasha Denona, for example, you have the cream to powder mattes. So anyway, I just thought this would be kind of an interesting exercise here. Hopefully helpful to you all. Zoom in one more time. And this was the second arm. Put that in frame. All right, so that's going to do it for the swatches. I am not sure if I'm going to put this before or after the demo, but let's hop back into the video. All right, so let's get into the demo. So obviously I'm going to do my eyes first, just in case there's any fallout. And I already primed my eyelids using the Fenty primer and the Charlotte Tilbury powder. So that is what I have on my eyelids so far. But let's get into this little palette here. So I have already used this, and I don't recall exactly what I did last time, but I think I'm gonna start off with that matte shade in the crease using my Sonia G classic crease brush. I think Beautylish just restocked a lot of Sonia G brushes. They restocked and they might have introduced a new one. I think the mini buffer is new. So if you had your eyes on any Sonia G brushes, it would be a good time to check to see if they've been restocked, because it seems like they kind of go a couple months without being in stock once they're out of stock. So I purchased one of the Traditions brushes. I wanted to replace my e.l.f. small tapered brush, which has been discontinued. So that Sonia G brush looked like it would be kind of what I like in a brush like that. So anyway, that is still being shipped. So going into this other little matte shade on a mini booster, these do tend to kick up quite a bit when you put your brush in. So I definitely recommend tapping your brush off. Like I have this paper towel here. So if you want to control the amount of pigment and build slowly, then I definitely recommend either tapping your brush off or just trying to knock off any excess. So I saw a lot of people speak really highly of this palette, including it in their either best of 2024 lists or ranking it fairly highly. I was kind of surprised by that, to be honest. And I think this palette might have ranked higher than its companion sister palette, the Sugar palette. So I already did a review of that palette. So this palette right here, I already did a review of this palette, but it has that kind of icier color story. To me, that one was a little bit more interesting. This palette, depending on your skin tone, so I'm just gonna go back into that first matte shade in the classic crease just to blend. For my skin tone, I don't find this to be kind of an easy running out the door palette. I think it takes a little bit more time and attention just to make sure everything is kind of well blended. And it's possible to kind of let things escalate can get out of hand if you're not careful. So I'm not saying it's impossible to work with. It's just the nature of this formula. And to a certain extent, I think I need a little bit more in that eye. And as I think a lot of people who did palette rankings said, at a certain point, it's not really the quality that you're judging, it's what you like according to your preferences. So if you like kind of a more impactful matte shade, or if you have a deeper complexion so that it's not as stark a contrast on you, then it could be a great kind of everyday travel palette for you. But for me, it's just, again, something that requires a little bit more kind of care and attention. I'm gonna go in with that metallic shade. I think that's the only true metallic in this palette. So it does definitely pick up on the brush. And this is a decent mirror to actually use for your eyeshadow application. I think maybe the first time I wore this, I was meeting some friends for brunch. So sometime in the early afternoon, probably. So like I said, this just became a little bit more dramatic than I was really intending pretty quickly, but it is nice quality. Maybe a little bit more of a fall color story than the other one, but still very pretty. So with that Rephr 28 brush I just used, and again, I'm just kind of wiping off the brushes as needed on this paper towel. I'm gonna go in with this shade right here. So this one is a different formula. Definitely more of a sparkly kind of effect there. So I think, as I'll probably point out in the swatch portion, it was interesting to see how Anastasia named some of these shades, because I think the naming convention that she gave them kind of mimics Natasha Denona in some ways. So I don't know if that was intentional, if she's trying to kind of innovate and update on her formulas. So I'm gonna go in with that pinker shade right there. Yeah, so it's interesting because the last kind of duo of palettes that came out like this, I have swatch videos, or a swatch video on my channel. They were the mini Sultry and the mini Modern Renaissance, I think they were called. And those were inspired by the larger ABH palettes that had come out and were super popular. So I like the level of sparkle there. I just want to, I guess, give it a little bit of something extra. So I'm gonna take my finger in that middle shade. They still feel a little bit thicker. They're not quite as, I guess, smooth or as thin as some other formulas. But still really pretty. So as you can see, because I have hooded eyes, the sparkle kind of gets into my upper eyelid area. So if I see that happening, I like to just kind of get it to be even on both sides, especially when my eyelid is open. So yeah, and I definitely do have some fallout, as I said. So I'm going to take some micellar water and a cotton pad. Actually, before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and do my eyeliner. So I think I just want a nice brown. I guess I'll use the Victoria Beckham in Cinnamon, keeping with the spice theme. So this isn't going to be kind of as stark as a brown, but it definitely does give it a little bit more definition at the lash line. And then I like taking this 208 brush from BK to blend that liner and give myself a little wing. So I think because this is more of a metallic pencil, again, it's not quite as stark. And applying over a foiled metallic eyeshadow is also a little bit more difficult. I think those are decently even on the first try. So then I always curl my lashes and apply my Tarte Lights Camera Splashes. I have 2 of these on my desk, and one of them is older and I need to toss it. And somehow I got them mixed up, so I'm trying to figure out which one is the newer one. Still can't tell. Okay, so now that that part of the eye is done, and I thought I would go ahead and do that just in case, you know, messing around with the eyeliner or whatever, any additional fallout, I thought it would be best just to go ahead and do that. So I am going to remove this fallout and apply the rest of my makeup. So I'll wrap up and then I'll be back to kind of give you my final thoughts and let you know whether I think you should buy it. Okay, so we're back. So just to quickly run through what I did, and of course everything will be linked down below. I used the Estee Lauder Futurist Aqua Brilliance Primer, and I tried out one of the purchases from my Black Friday haul, the Sweed Glass Skin Foundation. Finally got this in. This I have in the shade, where did you go? 01. So this was a really interesting experience. I was expecting, based on the packaging more or less, that it was going to be very thin, kind of serum-like. It actually has a decent kind of texture to it, and it's not nearly as like hydrating and glowy as I thought it would be. So it definitely has some kind of tenacity to it. I'm gonna try to love it. I think for me, having super dry skin, I would need to go in with a little bit of a heavier moisture layer, like the Make Reverse Emulsion. I haven't powdered. I think in person, I don't feel like I need to powder as much, but looking at my monitor, I do look a little bit more shiny, so I'm gonna throw some powder on. But yeah, it's a really interesting product. I think if you do have super dry skin, it does have a decent amount of coverage though. I'll give it that. If you do have super dry skin, I think I still prefer the Patrick Ta. This is super nice and travel friendly though, so I'll give them that. And you get 1 fluid ounce here. I also have the blush from Sweed in the shade Cheeky, and the Mario Skin Enhancer. I used my Charlotte Tilbury corrector, the powder, of course. Is that all I did? I also set my under eyes, and I used the Kulfi concealer in the shade Bad Badam. The blush is nice. The packaging is a little cheap, maybe. I forget how much this goes for, but it seems like this is a brand, I don't know, visually I kind of put them in the same categories like Westman Atelier or Kjaer Weis, and they have those kind of refillable evergreen compacts. So I would like it if these had kind of refillable compacts and you could just buy the singles and that kind of thing, but anyway. So yeah, so I set my under eyes as I said, and I like to often take just a little bit of shadow. So I'm going to go in with that lightest matte shade again on a flat definer. All of these blue handled brushes from Sonia G are part of the Sky Eye set, if that is still available. I'm not sure I needed this shade. It probably would have looked better if I'd gone with a cooler shade. Sometimes putting warm shades right next to the eyes make them look a little red. All right, and then going in with my Clinique Bottom Lash. And I think that is it for the eyes. Let me quickly throw something onto the lips. Wherever Walnut. Actually, I'm gonna use this formula as opposed to this formula. I have a video where I compare the two in case you're curious. And then I'm just gonna put on some of the Ulla Henriksen lip balm in Cocoa Cream. All right, so I'll call it there. I feel like I could use a little bit more bronzer actually. Let me just throw some of this Gucci on. I haven't broken this out in a while. I really like the Mario, but sometimes it's a little bit too subtle for the camera. Okay, so that is the finished look. So let's talk about this little palette here, which of course is going to show all the fingerprints. So I think it's really nice, especially for kind of the compactness of the packaging. The price point I think is great, especially if it goes on sale or if there's kind of a deal where I think these two were a bundle together that you could pick up. So unfortunately, like I said, I think this color story doesn't really suit this time of year as much. It's really pretty though. So if you like a warm eye look, we have Valentine's Day coming up, so maybe you'd like to do something a little bit more festive for that. That would make a lot of sense, and yeah, I think it's really pretty. But like I said, I think it's a little deceptive, at least to me, because looking at the pictures online, I thought, okay, this is just going to be a basic everyday color story. They definitely have a little bit more impact to them. So like I said, for me, this wouldn't be kind of an everyday palette. This is more of like a festive nighttime palette for me. It is travel friendly, so I guess if I were traveling to that kind of event, I could take this along without too much hassle. I do wish that we'd maybe gotten some more true mattes and not that kind of sequin shade that she's calling a matte. So on the whole, I think this is a good palette and I would recommend picking it up. I think you just have to be aware going into it whether these are the type of formulas that you like, whether you can tolerate some kick up or fallout, and kind of work around it. But I think what I mentioned is really down to preference and not a feeling on the part of the palette. So yeah, I'd say it's definitely worth taking a look, especially if you can get it on sale. And that will do it for this video. So hope you guys enjoyed watching it. I still have a few more palettes. I'm trying to save some of the more springtime ones for the end of this little series that I'm doing so that they're a little bit more timely that way. But I hope you found this video helpful, whether you were thinking of picking this palette up or if you already have it, maybe gave you some ideas for how to use it. All right, so that's gonna do it. I hope you guys are all doing well and staying safe, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.